Jasmine Crockett threatens to jail. John Kennedy immediately jailed John if he goes public. The air in the Washington, D.C. briefing room crackled with an unspoken tension, the kind that makes every rustle of paper or creak of a chair feel like a prelude to something seismic. Reporters lined the rows, their pens poised like arrows, cameras blinking steadily under the harsh glare of overhead lights. The room wasn't packed to the brim, but the weight of anticipation made it feel as though we're inching closer with every passing second. Jasmine Crockett, a Democratic congresswoman known for her sharp legal mind and unyielding resolve, stood at the podium, her posture steady, but her eyes burning with purpose. She adjusted the microphone, her navy blazer catching the light, and leaned forward slightly, her voice cutting through the hum of whispered side conversations. "I'm here to address recent remarks made by Senator John Kennedy," she began, her tone measured but firm, each word landing like a deliberate step on a tightrope. "His reckless criticism of my election reform bill, which seeks to protect every citizen's right to vote, has crossed a line. I'm calling for into his statements for inciting division, and frankly, he should face consequences, potential even jail time for undermining democratic processes." The room froze. A reporter in the front row dropped his pen, the clatter echoing in the stunned silence. Another blinked rapidly, as if trying to process whether she'd heard correctly. Jasmine Crockett, a sitting congresswoman, had just publicly suggested jailing a U.S. senator from Louisiana, a Republican known for his fully demeanor and sharp-witted Senate floor speeches. The accusation was in Vegas. She'd pointed directly to Kennedy's recent comments at a Louisiana town hall where he'd called her bill a thinly veiled attack on free speech, dressed up as reform. He'd warned that could criminalize dissent by empowering federal oversight of local elections in ways that felt to him like a verge. Now Crockett was hitting back and hard. Her words hung in the air, heavy and unyielding, as camera shutters clicked furiously and live feeds began streaming to every corner of the internet. Within minutes, the clip waved everywhere. On social media, snippets of Crockett's statement ricocheted across platforms X TikTok with headlines screaming in bold, "Crockett calls for senator's arrest and Congresswoman threatens jail over election bill clash." The thumbnail images showed her mid-sentence face stern with red banners amplifying the drama. In Baton Rouge, a diner flipped the TV to a news channel, looping the clip, and patrons paused over their coffee to watch. A college student in New Orleans tapped her phone, sharing the video with a caption, "This is wild. Is this even legal?" Across the country, in a small coffee shop in Boise, Idaho, a barista named Tara propped her tablet against the register, replaying the moment while customers leaned in, murmuring. The story wasn't just news. It was a spark, and the kindling was already dry. Back in the briefing room, a reporter from a national outlet raised a trembling hand. "Congresswoman, are you saying you'll push the Department of Justice to act against Senator Kennedy?" Crockett didn't flinch. "I'm saying his words have consequences," she replied, her voice cool but unwavering. "He's spreading dangerous misinformation about a bill meant to protect voters, and that kind of rhetoric can destabilize trust in our elections. We're exploring all options to ensure accountability." Another reporter jumped in, voice sharp. "Are you accusing him of a crime?" Crockett tilted her head slightly, a lawyer's precision in her pause. "I'm accusing him of undermining the democratic process," she said. "Whether that's a crime is for others to decide, but I won't stand by while someone twists the truth to scare people." Their room buzzed as reporters typed furiously, their laptops glowing with breaking news drafts. Behind Crockett, her press aide, Patrice, stood with arms crossed, her expression unreadable, other eyes scanning the room for reactions. Even she seemed caught off guard by the boldness of the moment, though she'd later admit she'd seen Crockett's fear building for days. The election reform bill at the heart of the storm was Crockett's passion project, a carefully crafted proposal to standardize early voting access and limit last-minute polling location changes. On paper, it was about fairness, ensuring no voter, especially in underserved communities, faced unnecessary hurdles. But Kennedy had taken aim at a specific clause, one that allowed federal monitors to step in if local election officials were deemed not compliant with new transparency rules. To him, it smelled like federal overreach, a way to silence critics by labeling their objections as non-compliance. At his town hall in Shreveport, Helen into the microphone, his draw deliberate, and said, "This bill isn't about voting. It's about control. It's about punishing anyone who dares question the process. That's not democracy. That's a leash." His words he'd resonated with his base, and clips of his speech were already trending when Crockett stepped to the podium. She'd watched them in her D.C. office, her team huddled around a laptop, the air thick with frustration. "He's framing it like I'm the enemy of freedom," she'd said, her voice low, but sharp. "He's not just disagreeing, he's making it personal." Her chief of staff, Marcus, had urged caution. "He's a senator, Jasmine. He's got clout, and Louisiana loves him. You push too hard, it could backfire." But Crockett had shaken her head, her jaw set. "He's banking on me staying quiet. That's not happening. And so she'd walked into the briefing room with a plan not just to defend her bill, but to draw a line in the sand. As the press conference ended, the fallout was on X. The hashtag Jail Kennedy began trending, pushed by Crockett supporters, but it was quickly drowned out by a counterwave hashtag stand with Kennedy. In Louisiana, where Kennedy had served as a senator since 2017, local radio stations buzzed with callers. A truck driver in Lafayette said she's trying to shut him up because he's telling the truth. A teacher in Baton Rouge countered Crockett's fighting for voters. Kennedy's just playing to the crowd. The divide wasn't just political, it was visceral, splitting along lines of trust, region, and ideology. By evening, the story had hit every major news outlet. CNN ran a panel debating whether Crockett's tweet was a bold stand or a dangerous precedent. MSNBC called it a defense of democracy. Fox labeled it an attack on free speech. In a bar in Dallas Crockett's home district, a woman watching the coverage shook her head. "She's not wrong, but she's playing with fire," she muttered. Her friend nodded. "Ken's not the type to back down. This is about to get messy." And messy it got within hours. Kennedy's team was alerted to the clip. In his Senate office, surrounded by stacks of legal pads and a framed photo of the Louisiana bayou, he watched the footage in silence. His communications dirt. Ellen stood nearby, her phone buzzing with notifications. "We need a response, Senator," she said. Now Kennedy leaned back in his chair, his glasses perched on his nose, and let out a slow breath. "She wants a fight," said his voice, calm, but edged with steel. "Let's give her one, but not the way she expects." Kennedy didn't rush to a podium or call a press conference. Instead, he sat at his desk, opened his laptop, and clicked go live on his official social media accounts, Facebook, YouTube, X, all at once. No script, no teleprompter, just him, his desk, lamp casting a soft glow, and a single sheet of paper with the bill's text marked a pin blue ink. "Good evening, folks." He began his Louisiana draw, warm but deliberate. "I'm not here to throw punches or make threats. I'm here to talk about a bill that's got my name tangled up in something ugly." He held up document, his fingers tracing the highlighted lines. "Congresswoman Crockett says, I am undermining democracy by questioning this. Let me read you what I'm questioning, and you decide for yourself." He read the clause aloud, slowly, pausing to explain its implications in plain language. How federal monitors could override local election officials. How noncompliance was vaguely defined. How it could chill free speech by making criticism feel like a liability. "This isn't about stopping voters," he said, looking straight into the camera. "It's about making sure no one voter, official, or senator gets silenced for asking questions. That's all I did. And no, I'm being told I could face jail for it." He leaned forward, his voice steady but firm. "I'm not scared of threats. I'm scared of a country where we can't talk anymore." The live stream exploded. Within 10 minutes, it had 50,000 viewers. By the half-hour mark, it was closing in on 1 million. In Shreveport, a group of college students gathered in a dorm common room, watching on a shared screen, passing a bag of chips as they debated. "He's making sense," one said, "but she's got a point about protecting voters." In New Orleans, a barista named Jamal streamed it on his phone during his break, nodding as Kennedy spoke. "He's not yelling, he's just laying it out." Comments flooded the feed, some praising Kennedys.com, others accusing him of dodging the bill's intent. A retired librarian in Alexandria, Louisiana, typed, "Thank you, Senator, keep speaking for us." A law student in Chicago countered, "He's twisting it. The bill's about access, not control." Kennedy stayed online for 20 minutes answering a few viewer questions typed into the chat. When someone asked, "Are you worried about Crockett's threat?" he chuckled softly, "I've been called worse than dangerous, and I'm still here. Let's focus on the bill, not the noise." He signed off with a simple, talk to your neighbors. Read the bill, think for yourself. The screen went black, but impact was just beginning. By nightfall, an arch stand with Kennedy was trending nationwide, overtaking Crockett's hashtag in under an hour. Local news stations in Louisiana ran segments with headlines like, "Senator fights back with facts." A Baton Rouge diner owner taped a handwritten sign to his counter, "Ken speaks truth." In Dallas, Crockett watched the live stream in her office. Her team gathered around her. Patrice handed her a tablet showing trending numbers. "He's winning the narrative," she said quietly. Crockett's eyes narrowed, but her voice stayed even. "He's good, I'll give him that, but he's betting I'll back down. He's wrong." She turned to Marcus. "Get me a slot on a national show tomorrow. No local outlets. I want everyone watching." Marcus nodded, already dialing. Outside, the DC night buzzed with city lights and the hum of a story that was no longer just about a bill or a threat. It was about who controlled the truth. In a small apartment in Baton Rouge, amateur named Clara watched Kennedy's video with her teenage son. "He sounds like he's talking to us, not at us," she said. Her son shrugged. "Crockett's not wrong though. Voting's been messed with before." Clara nodded, her eyes on the screen. That's why this matters. They're both saying something, but only one's listening. The stage was set, and Theckentree was tuning in, waiting to see who would blink first. The morning after Senator John Kennedy's live stream, the airwaves were ablaze, and the internet was a battlefield of hashtags and hot takes. Jasmine Crockett's office in Dallas buzzed with frenetic energy, phones ringing off the hook, aides darting between desks, and a flat-screen TV looping cable news segments that dissected her clash with Kennedy. The Congresswoman sat at her desk, scrolling through X on her tablet, her expression unreadable, but her eyes sharp, taking in flood of posts understand with Kennedy. Some called her a tyrant, for threatening to jail a senator. Others praised her for standing up to what they saw as obstructionism. The narrative was slipping, and she knew it. Patrice, her press aide, stood nearby, clutching a stack of printouts. Media requests mostly, but also a few release smears from fringe blogs claiming Crockett's bill was a power grab funded by shady interest groups. "They're coming for you, Patrice," said her voice, low but urgent. "Kennedy's got the momentum now. We need to hit back." Crockett set the blade down, her fingers tapping the desk rhythmically. "Not yet," she said. "Let them think they're winning. People show their cards when they're cocky." She leaned back, her mind already mapping out her next move. She wasn't rattled, not visibly, but the weight of the moment was undeniable. Her call for Kennedy's investigation had ignited a firestorm, and now she had to decide whether to douse it or fan theftless across the country. Kennedy's live stream had struck a chord, not just in Louisiana, but in places as far-flung as Boise and Bismarck. In a Shreveport community center, a group of retirees gathered for their weekly coffee meet. Their conversation dominated by the senator's calm, folksy delivery. "Hadn't yell or nothing," said a man in a flannel shirt stirring his coffee. "Just the bill and told us to think for ourselves. That's how you know he's serious." A woman across the table nodded. "Crockett's got guts, but threaten in jail, that's too far." By midday, small gatherings had popped up across Louisiana. Nothing massive, just knots of people in church parking lots and town squares holding signs that read, "Free speech matters and let Kennedy speak." They weren't rowdy. They were measured, almost solemn, as if they sensed the stakes were bigger than one senator or one bill. Local news crews in Baton Rouge and New Orleans captured the scenes, airing footage of families and veterans standing together, their voice quiet but resolute. One clip showing a grandmother in a folding chair holding a That said, truth over threats went viral, racking up 2 million views on YouTube by evening. The hashtag #StandWithKennedy climbed higher, fueled by ordinary folks, teachers, mechanics, nurses who weren't usually the loudest in social media, but felt compelled to share the senator's video with captions like, "This is what leadership looks like, and no one should be silenced for asking questions." Crockett, meanwhile, wasn't sitting idle. She'd secured a slot on a national morning show, a high-stakes platform where she'd have 10 minutes to reclaim the narrative. The studio in New York was sleek, all glass and polished wood, with a host known for asking pointed questions without picking sides. As Crockett sat under the bright lights, her navy blouse crisp and her hair pulled back, she projected calm confidence. The host, a woman named Laura Chen, didn't waste time. "Congresswoman, you suggested Senator Kennedy could face jail for his criticism of your bill. That's a bold move. Why go there?" Crockett leaned forward slightly, her hands clasped. "I didn't suggest jail." Lightly, she said, her voice steady. "Senator Kennedy's words aren't just criticism. They're misinformation designed to scare people into thinking this bill takes away their rights. It doesn't. It protects voters by ensuring no one can move polling stations at the last minute or limit early voting to suppress turnout." He's framing it as a threat to free speech. But what's the real threat? Denying Simeon their vote. Chen pressed harder. "But calling for an investigation, even jail, doesn't that risk chilling free speech itself?" Crockett didn't blink. "Accountability is censorship," she said. "If you spread falsehoods that undermine democracy, you don't get a free pass just because you're a senator." The segment ended with Chen nodding thoughtfully, but the online reaction was mixed. Supporters praised Crockett's visited a high school in Lafayette, speaking to a civics class about the importance of open debate. The students, many of whom had seen his video, peppered him with questions. "Why is she so mad at you?" a junior asked. Kennedy smiled, his glasses glinting under the classroom lights. "She's mad because I read her bill out loud," he said. "Sometimes the truth makes folks uncomfortable." He handed out pocket-sized copies of the Constitution, urging the kids to read First Amendment. "This is your shield," he told them. "Don't let anyone take it from you." The visit wasn't televised, but a student posted a shaky phone video of Kennedy's talk, and it spread like wildfire. By afternoon, it had 500,000 views, with comments calling him the people's senator and a voice of reason. In Dallas, Crockett's team watched the clip, and Marcus, her chief of staff, shook his head. "He's turning this into a civics lesson," he said. "We're fighting a PR war, and he's out here playing Mr. Rogers." Crockett's lips twitched into a half smile. "Let him play," she said. He's not the only one who can teach, but the war wasn't just about speeches and videos. The internet had turned ugly. A Fring blog posted a story claiming Kennedy had taken dark money from groups opposed to Vader rights, recycling old campaign finance records that were public and uncontroversial. The story was thin, but it didn't need to be airtight to gain traction. Right-wing commentators picked it up, twisting it to paint Crockett as a hypocrite for accusing Kennedy of misinformation while her supporters spread rumors. On X, a doctored image circulated showing Kennedy at a rally he'd never attended with a caption claiming he was cozying up to extremists. Kennedy's team caught wind of it quickly. Ellen, his communication steward, flagged the post for review and drafted a statement debunking it with receipts, public records showing Kennedy's schedule and donations. "They're throwing mud," she told him over coffee in his Senate office. "We keep it clean, but we don't stay quiet." Kennedy nodded, scribbling a note on a legal pad. "Get me the bill's text again," he said. "I want to do another video, but this time, we're inviting folks to read along." That evening, he posted a short clip on X, holding up the bill and walking through another clause. This one about federal fines for local officials who didn't follow the new rules. "This could bankrupt small counties," he said, his tone conversational. "Is that protecting voters or punishing folks who can't afford to fight back?" The clip hit 1 million views by midnight. In Dallas, Crockett's office was a pressure cooker. The smears against Kennedy weren't hurting, but they were hurting her case, making her look like the aggressor. Patrice handed her a phone, showing fellatist XT trends. "They're calling you a bully now," she said. Crockett acknowledged sharply. "They're not wrong about the optics," she admitted, "but I'm not backing off the bill. It's too important." She stood, pacing the room. "We need to shift this. Get me a town hall here in Dallas. Open to everyone. No media filter. Let them ask me anything." Patrice hesitated. "That's risky. You could get ambushed." Crockett stopped her eyes. "Fierce. Good. Let them come. If I can't defend this bill to my own people, I don't deserve to be here." By nightfall, flyers were circulating in and in local shops announcing the town hall. In Louisiana, Kennedy heard about it and smiled faintly. "She's not folding," he told Ellen. "Neither am I." Across the country, people were picking sides, but a quiet undercurrent was growing. Folks who didn't care about the politics, but wanted answers. In a diner in Mobile, Alabama, a waitress named Lena watched the latest news segment and muttered, "They're both right and they're both wrong. Why can't they just talk?" The question lingered unanswered as the nation waited for the next move. The feud between Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett and Senator John Kennedy had come a national spectacle, a clash of wills that had the country glued to screens and buzzing with opinions. Social media was a storm of hashtags. Hashar stand with Kennedy hatch, protect, vote, while cable news panels dissected every word, every gesture. Crockett's bold call for Kennedy's investigation had lit a fuse, and his calm pointed livestream had fanned theft flames, turning a policy dispute into a referendum on free speech and accountability in Dallas. Crockett's team scrambled to manage the fallout. Their office a blur off ringing phones and urgent emails. In Louisiana, Kennedy's supporters relued in quiet but resolute gatherings, holding signs that read, "Let him speak." The air was thick with tension, but beneath the noise, a new possibility was emerging, one that could either diffuse the conflict or redefine itinerary as the nation watched. A single meeting would shift the trajectory, forcing both Crockett and Kennedy to confront the cost of their public war and the potential for something greater. Kennedy's next move wasn't another live stream or a Senate floor speech, but a calculated appearance on Horizon, a national talk show hosted by Alina Marquez, a journalist known for cutting through rhetoric to get to the heart of an issue. The studio was simple, dark wood, soft lights, 2 chairs facing each other like a conversation between old friends. Kennedy sat, his suit slightly wrinkled, his glasses perched low on his nose, exuding the same folksy calm that had made his live stream go viral. Marquez didn't ease in. SNR Congresswoman Crockett accused you of spreading misinformation about her election reform bill and suggested you could face jail. What's your response? Kennedy leaned forward, his voice steady, his Louisiana draw, wrapping each word in quiet conviction. "Alina, I'm not here to pick a fight. I'm here to talk about a bill that's got some rough edges. Last week, I read a clause about federal monitors taking over local elections. Tonight, let's look at another." He pulled out a dog-eared copy of the bill, its pages marked with neat underlines and read a line of boot penalties for counties that failed to meet new transparency rules. "This could slap a small town with fines they can't pay," he said, looking up. "That's not helping voters. It's punishing communists that don't have big budgets." Marquez nodded, her expression neutral but engaged. "Crockett says her bill stops voter suppression. Step in could scare folks into silence. There's a better way, and it starts with sitting down and talking it out." Marquez leaned back, her eyes sharp. "Are you open to that conversation?" Kennedy smiled faintly. "I'm here, aren't he?" The interview was a masterclass in restraint, and it hit hard. Clips spread across X, YouTube, and TikTok with talk not threats surging past Hatch stand with Kennedy and ours. In a New Orleans coffee shop, a group of students watch it on a shared phone, one saying, "He's not yelling, he's just making sense." A Retier in Shreveport posted, "Kennedy's keeping it real. Crockett needs Totchell." The senators call for dialogue. Overdivision resonated, especially with those tired of the endless political shouting matches. In Dallas, Crockett watched Desmond in her office. Her team huddled around a monitor. Patrice, her press aide, shook her head. "He's winning hearts." "Jasmine, people are eating up this calm senator vibe." Crockett's lips pressed into a thin line, but her voice stayed even. "He's good at playing the wise man, but he's still twisting Theobald. It's not about control. It's about protecting voters." Marcus, her chief of staff, tapped his pen on a notepad. "The public's starting to see him as the reasonable one. Your jail comments, Nethelping." Crockett stood pacing the small room. "I know I went too far with that word, but I'm not letting him frame this as me versus free speech. We need to shift this." She turned to Patrice. "What's the status on that meeting with Senator Warner?" Patrice glanced at her phone. "She's pushing for it tomorrow, D.C., no press. She's got Kennedy on board." Crockett raised an eyebrow. He agreed. Patrice nodded. "He's serious about talking." The meeting was arranged by Senator Claire Warner, a moderate Democrat from Oregon with a knack for bridging divides. She'd reached out to both Crockett and Kennedy, framing Theobald down as a chance to cool the firestorm before it consumed them both. "This isn't about who wins," she'd told Kennedy over the phone. "It's about showing the country we can still salvie probables." Kennedy had chuckled dryly. "She threatened to lock me up." "Claire, that's a funny way to start a chat." But he'd agreed, insisting on a small probate setting. Crockett, too, had accepted, though, with a weariness born of the public pummeling she'd taken. The meeting took place in a nondescript conference room in the Dirksen Senate office building. Its beige walls and fluorescent lights, a stark contrast to the high-stakes drama outside. Crockett arrived first, her blazer sharp, a binder of notes under her arm. Kennedy followed, carrying only his marked-up bill and a legal pad, his tie slightly askew. Warner sat at the head of the table, joined by Senator Paul Grayson from Pennsylvania, a Republican known for his quiet pragmatism. No aides, no chimeras, just for lawmakers and a shared problem. Warner set the tone. "We're here, here, not to fight. Let's focus on what's fixable in this bill." Crockett went first, her voice calm but firm. "My bill's about making sure every voter gets a fair shot, especially in places where polling stations get moved. Ours get cut. That's happened too often in my district. People show up and their vote's gone." Senator Kennedy's painting it as a federal power grab, but thought's not the intent. Kennedy leaned forward, his pen tapping the table. "I hear you, Congresswoman. Nobody wants voters shut out. But this clause, half flipped to a page, pointing to the federal monitor provision. It's too vague. Who decides what's non-compliant? That could scare small-town officials into silence." Grayson nodded. "He's right about the ambiguity. Jasmine, your goal's solid, but the language needs tightening." Crockett's eyes narrowed, but she didn't interrupt. Warner jumped in. "Let's start with the fines. Can we limit them to clear, documented cases of voter suppression?" For an hour, they debated, scribbling notes on a whiteboard. Crockett proposed requiring public complaints before federal action. Kennedy suggested mandatory local input. It wasn't seamless. Tensions flared when Kennedy pushed for less federal oversight. But by the end, they'd outlined a revised clause that balanced voter protections with local autonomy. As they stood to leave, Warner looked at them both. "This stays here until we have a draft. No leaks." They nodded, though the air still crackled with distrust. The meeting didn't stay secret. By evening, a Capitol Hill blog reported Crockett and Kennedy in closed-door talks. Truce or trap on X reactions ranked from hopeful. "Maybe they'll actually fix this bill," to skeptical. "This is just for show." In Dallas, Crockett's town hall was now a hot wiry act. The community center was packed. Locals, activists, a few hecklers, all waiting to hear her defense. She walked to the podium. No notes, just the bill's text in hand. "I heard you," she began, her voice steady. "I went too far, saying, jail. Matt, it was a mistake, and I own it. But this bill is about your right to vote, and I'm fighting for that." A retiree stood, her voice soft but firm. "I trust you, but that jail talk scared me. Why go there?" Crockett met her eyes. "I wanted accountability, not fear. I'm sorry for the word choice, but I'm not sorry for defending your vote." A young man in a hoodie asked Kennedy, "Says you are stifling free speech. Is he wrong?" Crockett took a breath. "He's worried about overreach. I get it. We're working on fixing those parts together." The crowd didn't cheer, but they listened, and that was enough. As she left, a teenager handed her a voter registration form. "I'm voting because of you," he said. Crockett's smile, "Why small, but real. That's why I'm here." The closed-door meeting in the Dirksen Senate office building had planted a seed, fragile but real. And now the nation waited to see if it would take root or wither under the glare of public scrutiny. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett and Senator John Kennedy, once locked in a bitter public feud, had emerged from their tense discussion with a rough draft of a revised election reform bill 1 that aimed to protect voters without heavy-handed federal oversight that had sparked their clash. The news off their collaboration leaked slowly, not as a headline-grabbing spectacle, but a saw-quiet ripple that caught the attention of those weary of the shouting match. Social media, still buzzing with #stand with ours. Kennedy and Vantage Protect the Vote began to shift toward cautious hope with posts like Crockett and Kennedy working together. Maybe there's a chance for real change. In Dallas, Crockett's office was a whirlwind of activity. Her team fielding calls from reporters, community organizers, and even a few curious constituents who'd heard whispers of the compromise. In Louisiana, Kennedy's staff sorted through a flood of emails, many from supporters urging him not to cave, but others praising his willingness to talk. The country was watching not just for the outcome of the bill, but for what it said about whether two people on opposite sides could find common ground without losing their principles. The revised bill, tentatively called the Voter Access and Accountability Framework, wasn't flashy. Its 28 pages outlined clear standards for early voting, required public notice for polling location changes, and capped federal fines for not to protect small counties. The clause about federal monitors, the heart of Kennedy's objections, was rewritten to require local consultation and documented evidence of voter suppression before any intervention. It was a compromise that didn't fully satisfy either side. Crockett wanted stronger federal oversight. Kennedy wanted less, but it was practical, and that was enough to keep them moving forward. They presented the draft to a small bipartisan group of lawmakers, including Senators Claire Warner and Paul Grayson, who had mediated the initial meeting. In a quiet conference room, the four sat around a table littered with coffee cups and marked-up pages, hammering out final details. Crockett spoke up, her voice steady but softer than in her press conference days. "This isn't perfect, but it's honest. It protects voters without stepping on local rights." Kennedy nodded his pen, tapping the table. "It's a start. Folks can vote without worrying their town will go broke for asking questions." Warner, ever the pragmatist, pushed for a timeline. "We need to get this to committee before the news cycle buries it. Let's aim for next week." They agreed, shaking hands, not as friends, but as colleagues who'd learned to respect the other's fight. The public response was mixed but powerful. In Dallas, Crockett held a community forum to unveil the revised bill standing in a high school gym packed with folding chairs and restless attendees. She held up a printed copy of the draft, her voice clear. "This isn't about me or Senator Kennedy. It's about you, your vote, your voice, and we fought wet-hacked and we built something better." A construction worker in the back stood, his boots scuffed from a long shift. "I didn't trust this bill at first, but you listen to Kennedy. That means something." A young woman, barely 20, raised her hand. "Will this make sure my polling place doesn't disappear again?" Crockett met her gaze. "That's the goal. If it doesn't, you hold me accountable." The room didn't erupt in cheers, but there was a quiet nod of approval, a sense that something real had been done. In Louisiana, Kennedy took a different approach, speaking at a town hall in Lafayette. He leaned into the microphone, his draw warm but direct. "Congresswoman Crockett and I don't see eye to eye on much, but we both want elections to work. This bill's not perfect, but it's fair than what we started with." A farmer in the crowd called out, "You didn't let her push you around, did you?" Kennedy chuckled. "Nobody pushes me around, but I listened. That's how you get things done." The crowd laughed and the mood lightened, but the message stuck. Compromise wasn't weakness, it was work. The broader impact was felt beyond the bill itself. Across the country, the history of Crockett and Kennedy's clash turned collaboration sparked a wave of civic engagement. In Mobile, Alabama, a library hosted a Read the Bill night where locals pored over the draft and debated its clauses over coffee. In Eugene, Oregon, a high school civics teacher played clips of Crockett's town hall and Kennedy's TV appearance, asking students to write essays on what compromise means in a divided world. In Shreveport, a church group organized a voter registration, passing out flyers that read, "Your vote matters. Make it count." The #TalkNaw threats continue to trend not just as a slogan but as a call to action. A college student in Atlanta tweeted, "I didn't care about politics until I saw two people who hate each other actually work together. That's leadership." A retiree in Boise posted, "I'm 72 and this is the first time I've seen politicians admit they were wrong and fix it." The momentum point is universal, though some of Crockett's supporters felt she'd compromised too much, while a few of Kennedy's backers grumbled that he'd gone soft. But the majority saw something rare. Two leaders choosing progress over pride. The lesson wasn't lost on either of them. Late on evening, Crockett sat in her Dallas office, a cup of tea cooling on her desk as she read through emails from one from a grandmother in her district stood out. "I was scared when you talked about jail, but I'm proud you talked it out. That's what I want my grandkids to see. Crockett folded the email and tucked it into her bag next to a pocket constitution she'd started carrying. In Louisiana, Kennedy was doing his own reflecting, sitting on his porch with a glass of sweet tea, the night air thick with the hum of cicadas. His communications director, Ellen, had texted him a clip of a local news segment praising the bill's progress. Hair plied with a single line, "We did all right." But the real impact came in the quiet moments. At a Baton Rouge community center, a teenager approached Kennedy after a talk holding a voter registration form. "I saw you, and that congresswoman, on TV," he said, "made me think my vote might actually matter." Kennedy handed him a pen. "It does. Don't let anyone tell you different." In Dallas, Crockett met a similar moment at a grocery store where a cashier stopped her. "You didn't back down. But you didn't keep fighting just to fight. That's why I'm voting next month." Crockett smiled, her eyes tired, but warm. "That's the whole point." The bill itself wasn't a done deal. It faced a tough road in committee with partisan wangling and amendments looming. But its mere existence was a victory not just for Crockett and Kennedy, but for the idea that